What's going on, everybody? Ochoa here from SB Nation's bloggingtheboys.com. Hope all is well wherever you are. Hope you're happy, safe, healthy, and that you have lots of comfort food on deck. This is our post-game show, my post-game show here on the Blogging the Boys YouTube channel, where if you aren't aware, we're on the march to 30,000 subscribers. We hope to get there through the end of the regular season and beyond. Which I know feels like a fool's errand right now. We're right beneath 23,000. So if you haven't subscribed yet, please consider doing so. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Threads, at RJ Ochoa, TikTok, RJ.Ochoa. Make sure to check out bloggingtheboys.com for the latest and greatest in the world of Dallas Cowboys news, discussion, and analysis, including lots from me, which you can obviously get here on the YouTube channel as well. We have a lot to get to. The Dallas Cowboys losing on, that's a really mild way to put it, on Sunday afternoon to the New Orleans Saints, 44-19, the final score. This thing was kind of about done really early on in the third quarter, and putting up with the rest of it was just really, really, really frustrating. We have a lot to get to, like I said, so let's go ahead and dive in. Let's take a look at my friends from NFL Pro and what they have said about this game. It is going to, I'm going to warn you, upset you. So let's take a look at the stats, first of all. Actually, box scores. This hasn't updated yet. I mentioned that it was pretty much over from the very beginning. You're looking at the win probability from the game. And New Orleans, if you somehow don't know, scored a touchdown on not only their first possession, not only their second possession, not only their third possession, not only their fourth possession, not only their fifth possession, and yes, actually on their sixth possession. Monica Geller was almost a very happy woman because the Dallas Cowboys allowed the New Orleans Saints to score a touchdown on each of their first six, not seven, six possessions of the game. That is impossible. This should not happen in the NFL. I don't care who you are, but if you're talking about a team who we expect to be a legitimate and proper defense in the NFL, this should certainly not be happening to you. And again, I mentioned how this was over. Look at halftime. Look at halftime right there. I mean, it was not a contest. You're talking about a well north of 75% win probability from the Saints. And I know we kind of were talking ourselves into maybe it can happen, maybe it can't, whatever the case may be. This was really, 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 really bad. Offensively, Derek Carr, let's take a look over here. 11 of, and we're talking about the Saints because we're talking about all the offense that they had. 11 of 16 for 243 yards, had 2 touchdowns, had the interception that I'm not going to put on Derek Carr. It was a tip ball at the very end, and the game was already well over for New Orleans. A 125 rating. This stood out to me, so I decided to look it up, and shout out to my friends at StatHead. I've got a lot of wonderful friends around here. If you want to support NFL Pro, StatHead, Homage, Breaking Tea, chat books. It is a wonderful time to support my wonderful friends. But that being said, 243 yards on 11 attempts. I'm going to show you the list because it's actually impossible to believe. I'm going to use the word impossible several times here because this is impossible. Let me make sure I get the right. Let's pull this off your screen. Pull this off. This is me. Derek Carr had 243 yards. 243 yards on 11 completions. 11 completions. This is what we're looking at here. All right, this is my tweet in case that isn't obvious here. That's me. Follow me on Twitter, et cetera, et cetera. We have not seen, or we have only seen, I should say, at least 243 yards on 11 completions or fewer 5 times this century. This entire century, we're in the 25th year of it because I do count 2000 because I'm a normal person. Kellen Clemens, Vince Young, Jeff Garcia, the super underrated Jeff Garcia, in my humble opinion. It's a conversation for a different day. It bothers me greatly that he played for the Eagles and they took away an NFC East title from Dallas. But anyway, Steve McNair, Chris Chandler, those are the only 5 players who have thrown for at least 243 yards on 11 or fewer completions this century. There are more. There aren't many more across all of NFL history, but this is just this century. The last time it happened, it was over a decade ago. I mean, you're talking about November of 2013 in a game that the St. Louis Rams played in Indianapolis. That was, I think that was already the Lucas Oil Stadium. But either way, I mean, the point is, that's crazy that this happened. That is actually, again, impossible that Derek Carr was that effective. The Dallas Cowboys surrendered, what was it, 442 total yards? Let me get this back up here. 432 total yards and had 44 points scored on them. The last time they were that bad in both of those respective areas was a game that was before the Dan Quinn era. It was 2. And let me put this tweet up there for you because this will also upset you. I'm looking, by the way, in case you're new around here, I know we have some new subscribers on the march to 30,000. I appreciate those of you. I've got another monitor over here. Got the Astros game on the iPad. It's a very busy time of year technologically in my house. You know how it goes. Anyway, let's get this up on the screen. That is a photo of Jerry Jones that somebody tweeted, I guess. Anyway, What you're looking at here is a list of games in which the Dallas Cowboys allowed at least 432 total yards and 44 or more points to be scored in the game. It had not happened since 2020 when the Cowboys hosted the Cleveland Browns. And obviously, that was a really bad day for the Cowboys. We all remember that. That was the peak of the Mike Nolan-ness, whatever. So, and look, I'm not at all calling for Dan Quinn, but it literally predates the Dan Quinn era. This did not happen one single time in the Dan Quinn era, and yet it happened in the second game ever under Mike Zimmer, the first home game under Mike Zimmer. I'm not saying that this is like a recurring thing, or at least that I think it's going to become a recurring thing for the Mike Zimmer-led Dallas Cowboys, but these are some really bad days. If you are a Cowboys fan, if you remember those 2013 games, all right, we're talking about that Denver game. That was the crazy Tony Romo, Peyton Manning shootout. We're coming up on the 11-year anniversary of it. I can't believe that, by the way. That New Orleans game was a crazy game as well. Back and forth, at least in those games, the Cowboys offense showed up. But that Chicago game, those of you old school Cowboys fans will remember that was a Monday night game. It was like -6 degrees. That was a horrible night where Josh McCown and the Chicago Bears with Brandon Marshall and Alshon Jeffrey, with Mark Trestman calling the shots, just really had their way. I mean, it is very difficult, again, to be this ineffective as a defense overall, but to do so specifically the way the Cowboys did, like we talked about with the Derek Carr stand. That was the reason I brought it up. The Cowboys defense got worked over and over and over and over again, and not just in general. You know, it's one thing if you run into an amazing offense, and I referenced those games, right? That 2013 Denver Broncos team, even though they lost the Super Bowl, it's one of the greatest offenses to ever live. That 2013 New Orleans Saints team, that's peak prime Drew Brees, obviously, right? Like we're talking about some of the greatest, just like combinations of offensive, play callers and quarterbacks and skill position players that we've ever seen, right? Like those are the types of teams who did this. And I mean, no disrespect to Derek Carr or Rashid Shaheed or Alvin Kamara or Dennis Allen even, but they are not them, right? So to allow this from them in general is a really big indictment. But to allow it on 11 completions from Derek Carr just really speaks to how if you watch every video here on the YouTube channel, first of all, love you. Really appreciate that. But something last week, when I speak to people who cover the other teams, I always ask, like, what would impress you if this team, for the Cowboys to do or to accomplish against this team, whatever the case may be, et cetera. When I spoke to Jared Mueller, my colleague at SB Nation who covers the Cleveland Browns, he said that he would be impressed, this was last week, if Dallas would be able to take advantage of the aggression of the Cleveland defense. And we saw that, right? They were able to, although things kind of slowed down in the second half offensively, blah, blah, blah. That same thing happened here. The New Orleans Saints, that's what that 11 completions, 243 yards speaks to, how the Saints just took advantage, how the Cowboys were biting over, and the Cowboys are so focused and swinging for home runs every single play on defense, and it just isn't happening. And for what it's worth, they didn't even hit any home runs. They barely got on base. I mean, we're talking about a baseball box score where you had like 2 total hits and maybe 3 base runners, because it was that perfect of a day for New Orleans in every single sense. In fact, I just shared this. Let me get this up on the screen right now. Let me zoom out. This is what I started the screen with over on NFL Pro. The Cowboys defense, we think of them as this fast-paced, Formula One car. Man, I thought Charles Leclerc was going to get it done on Sunday morning. Big bummer to start my day. But we think of them as this fast-paced group that's going to take advantage of everything. Well, let's look at this. Here we go. This is the Cowboys generated. I can't zoom in here, so hopefully you can see it, but I'll read it to you nonetheless. The Cowboys defense generated only 6 pressures on 17 passing dropbacks. Only 17 passing dropbacks, by the way. It's just remarkable in an NFL game in 2024 against Derek Carr, resulting in a 35.3% pressure rate. Dallas was over 44% last week. So you're talking about almost a 10% dip, which is, if you're looking at just this percentage, a quarter of that percentage, right? Go from 44 to 35, you're talking about a quarter of the 44%, if that makes sense. The 4th lowest in a game since the start of the 2023 season. And then that tiny font down below, Micah Parsons was the only Cowboys defender to generate multiple pressures. He had 3 of them, by the way, though the average get-off time of 0.99 seconds was the 5th slowest of his career. And that's what we spent so much time talking about this offseason, how the Cowboys defense wasn't going to be focused on swinging for the home run, how they were going to, be a little bit more content with, getting on base, to kind of live in that analogy. And that just did not happen. And so New Orleans was able to really take advantage of that and really manipulate it and really just kind of succeed. They were the ones hitting the home runs over and over and over again, because the Cowboys are trying to stick with this baseball analogy. They're just trying to, just fire these fastballs and throw heat. And that cannot happen. You have to play with finesse. And that was not something that we saw from the Cowboys defense at any point on Sunday. There are going to be people who type in caps lock and who get their information from national talk shows and things like that. And I have nothing against national talk shows. They're helpful, for some context and some discussion and some platform, enlargement. But that being said, those people are going to tell you that this game was on Dak Prescott. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Dak Prescott played a wonderful game for the Cowboys. But if you were looking at this game in the first half, if at halftime when you were all pissed off, right, and you were checking on the brisket that you were smoking out there, getting ready for dinner, that which now is going to suck, right? That's always happens when the Cowboys lose. Our whole day and our whole week is ruined. That being said, if at halftime you were blaming this on Dak Prescott, you are disconnected from reality. And as the incredible Bob Stern put it in a tweet where he was addressing the same situation, you had already pre-written your narrative and you have already decided that that's where you're going to go and that's who you're going to blame. Whenever it rains, it pours, it sleets, it snows for the Dallas Cowboys, you're always going to blame Dak. Dak was definitely a problem over the course of the second half. I'm not going to deny that. I don't think anybody would deny that, but everything was kind of broken in the second half as we showed by the win probability chart. That being said, in the first half, Cowboys scored on all but a singular possession, right? I mean, it was just a matter of, getting behind and behind and behind when you're allowing the other team to score touchdowns over and over again. And when your offense can't be perfect like that, when they're trading field goals for touchdowns, whatever the case may be, it's quicksand, as Shane Falco so eloquently put in The Replacements, which is a movie that I think is like 20 years old at this point in time. So it just never worked out. And then of course I did think the second interception that Dak threw was a matter of just trying to score 22 points on one throw, and you can't do that. And that's why when you get those big leads defensively, you're able to kind of pin your ears back. You're able to go after them. We saw that from the Cowboys on the Sounds from the Sideline video that the .com team does such a great job of putting together. If you didn't see it, go check it out. You should always check those out. We definitely won't be getting one this week, but you can see it from their trip to Cleveland. And so that being said, CeeDee Lamb played really well. Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb for a little bit single-handedly kept this team afloat and kept this team alive, which makes the fact that the front office delayed paying them as long as they did just absolutely and utterly hilarious. But this game was kind of the game that I think we thought we were going to get last week that reared its ugly head and that highlighted all of the decisions or lack of decisions over the course of the offseason. Dak and CeeDee are amazing, and I think Brandon Cooks is a legitimate and fine wide receiver 2 option. But without Jake Ferguson, that really, really highlighted how there is nobody on that offense that scares anybody. You're talking about Jalen Tolbert and Jalen Brooks being asked to play serious roles, and I feel bad about this because I like them as prospects, and I think that they can contribute to this team. But when you're putting that big of a responsibility percentage on their shoulders, you're asking for trouble. Jalen Tolbert had an amazing catch after the fact, and I think it was the catch of his career so far with the Cowboys that ultimately didn't even lead to a touchdown, which isn't his fault. But Jalen Tolbert also didn't fight for that weird incompletion that Tyrann Mathieu popped out like 14 yards or whatever it was. You have to be willing to do that. And when you're relying on players who aren't doing that or who can't do that, it sets you further behind the 8 ball. I hate to blame Jalen Brooks for the first interception, but if you slip and you fall on the route and you're not prepared, you can't fight for yourself, you leave everything else around you to also kind of fall apart. It pulls more and more at the thread. And so that's where things are at. And I don't, look, Dak Prescott has already been at the podium at the time that I'm putting this together. And I thought that his, quote about it all really kind of is classic Dak. He said, look, it would have been a different game if we had scored more touchdowns in the first quarter. We helped contribute to that whole. Dak's not going to be the dude that comes out here and says like, yeah, our defense sucked, right? Like, I mean, that's just not his MO. And that being said, it really highlighted how the Cowboys did nothing to add to this overall roster. And from a defensive coordinator perspective, I know I ate some crow last week, and I'm not here to act like I was right all along, but the Mike Zimmer hire was questionable to me from the very beginning. The only other candidates, remember this, who the Cowboys seriously considered for the job were Ron Rivera and Rex Ryan. This was something that they thought was going to work out, and it did in week 1 against the Browns, to be very fair. But I think through 2 weeks of the season, we can discern more than anything else that the Browns are just really, 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 really bad. And the Cowboys might be pretty good, but that was more about Cleveland being, a dysfunction on offense than it was about Dallas doing something specific, given what we've now seen from New Orleans, not just against the Cowboys, but against the Panthers. They look like a really legit offensive operation. We'll see where they obviously go from this point on. But that being said, the Mike Zimmer hire, I think now is kind of a, whoa, what were you doing, guys, kind of thing. And additionally, the lack of defensive firepower. Eric Kendricks, again, had a great game. We talked about his statistical accolades last week, but you had to add help. You cannot just assume that you have enough. You never can. And if you do, then you wind up in these positions where you're ultimately proverbially behind the 8 ball over and over and over again. And I'm 15 minutes into this video, and I'm looking outside, man, it's pouring at my house. At least the fall weather is here on a consistent basis. But I want to be careful with how I put this because I don't like to use this word a lot. And so I apologize in advance. But it was stupid. It was actually stupid to leave the starters out there as long as Mike McCarthy did. When you're down 22 points in the fourth quarter, look, I understand trying to build some level of momentum moving to the next week. I understand playing for pride or morale or whatever you want to call it, but it was actually stupid. All right. And look, Zach Martin got hurt and thankfully appeared to be all right. And I haven't seen any massive update on that. So it seems all is well on that front. But that happened after it made sense to kind of wave the white flag. Dak Prescott got sacked. CeeDee Lamb took a shot to the head that wasn't called, and you can complain about penalties if you wanted this game. I'm not going to stop you from that, but they wouldn't have made a difference, to be very clear here. But he took a shot to the head in the end zone after it would have made sense to wave the white flag. Bro, it is week 2. It is September 15th. The fall weather is just now arriving. This is a marathon, not a sprint. You cannot undo anything in this game where you're going to lose. You have to live to fight another day. You cannot be risking anyone but the likes of Zach Martin and CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott for whatever it is you're trying to accomplish. And even if you were trying to accomplish something, you didn't. You failed because the 2 possessions to start the fourth quarter where it made sense to yank the starters, the Cowboys had turnover on downs on both of them, literally both. So whatever morale or momentum or pride or whatever that you were chasing, you failed to get that too against a New Orleans defense that was playing soft because they were ready to get out of town and get home with their 2-0 record. So I vehemently disagree with that decision from Mike McCarthy. I cannot believe that he made it. I haven't seen any real justification from it, but it was a very, very frustrating cherry on top of a very, very frustrating Sunday that was Sunday, September 15th for us as Dallas Cowboys fans. And what made it worse or better, depending on, if you're if you put your toilet paper over or under, I don't know about those weird psychos that do it under. That's impossible to me. But that being said, the San Francisco 49ers lost to the Minnesota Vikings. The Detroit Lions lost to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We'll see what happens with the Eagles on Monday Night Football. Obviously, we know A.J. Brown's out of that game. The Baltimore Ravens lost to the Las Vegas Raiders. I mean, you're talking about perennial NFL teams. The Ravens, obviously, an AFC team. We'll get to that in a moment. But the Niners and the Lions both losing. I mean, this was a chance for you to pick some ground up on the would-be NFC contenders. And obviously, nobody knew that when the game was going on. But that's why you have to win these games. And again, maybe New Orleans winds up being a very, very good team when this season is all said and done. But that should not and will not excuse exactly how bad you lost against them, because the Lions may have lost, but they did not get worked. The Niners may have lost, but they did not get worked. And if you do want to make up excuses, you can talk about the Christian McCaffrey thing. Maybe you want to talk about the Jake Ferguson thing. I don't know, but you squandered an opportunity here, and that's very frustrating. And now the Ravens are all kinds of pissed off because they're 0-2, and they're coming to AT&T Stadium next Sunday, and they do not want to fall to 0-3. You are on a slippery slope. It is a very scary situation, and it's a hole that you dug yourself. And again, if you had lost, it'd be one thing. But to lose without ever being involved is just a different kind of gross and embarrassment and disgust. And yeah, I'm about done. So the brisket, whatever you have on, I hope it went well. I hope it's delicious. I hope it helps you take your mind off of this, because this was a very, very frustrating game for the Dallas Cowboys. I cannot believe that we actually watched this. I cannot believe that we actually lived this. I cannot believe that we have to sit with this for the course of an entire week, but we will, and we will analyze, and we will discuss it, and we will have all sorts of content available for you, of course, at bloggingtheboys.com. If you haven't yet, please subscribe here to the Blogging the Boys YouTube channel, getting very close to 23,000 subscribers, on our way to 30,000. If you want to follow me on Twitter, social media in general, you can do so. Twitter, Instagram, Threads at RJ Ochoa, or TikTok, rj.ochoa. If you want to send me an email, you can do so, rj.ochoa@sbnation.com. You can obviously leave a comment down below. I will do my best to get to all of those. I appreciate those of you still asking questions about the podcast and everything like that. This is the best way to find the content that I produce right now. And it really does mean a lot to me that you are passionate about supporting me, passionate about being involved, passionate about listening to me and following me, et cetera, et cetera. I know a lot of you have been following me for several years now, and that means a great deal. The Dallas Cowboys are 1-1, and it is not the end of the world, but it definitely feels like it. Our pets' heads are not falling off. Mine are asleep in their respective places here in the office, and they were very good puppies for the course of shooting this video, but we will prevail. We will move on. No victory polo Monday this week, unfortunately. And please, Falcons, please, Falcons, get a win on Monday night so that all of this can be just a little bit better and we don't have to put up with a little bit more annoyingness as a result of an Eagles win on Monday Night Football. I bid you all adieu. I hope you have a wonderful day. Hope you have a great rest of your weekend. And thanks so much for hanging out. with all that being said, yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and get out of here. Thanks so much for hanging out, everybody. See you next time. Oh, there we go. I clicked the wrong button. We'll see you next time.